Michael Fullilove, Executive Director of the Lowe Institute in Sydney, Australia, and a former advisor to a former Prime Minister, Paul Keating. You've just been in a session on Trump, where you had some very strong views. What do you think is going to be the long-term impact of Trump on American politics and politics around the world?
Well, we're in the odd position where the leader of the free world doesn't believe in the free world and doesn't want to leave it. And so if you think that the President of the United States has a strong impact on US foreign policy, then you have to think there are going to be long-term consequences of that. And we've seen many of his instincts about the world with which he came to office being translated into policy, whether it's on free trade or alliances and other issues. There have been limitations that have limited the consequences, including the so-called adults in the room, and also the
How many adults are there still?
There's a couple. I think there are 2 adults left, and there are rumours that they may leave the room after the midterms. And then I think the other thing we have going for us is the President's actual lack of interest in policy detail, which means that he's much more focused on the PR element than actually on changing the system. But I think we have to be careful about being too sanguine, because he has strong views on the world. He has enormous power at his disposal. He's in office for at least another 2 years, quite possibly another 6 years, and there's plenty of room for catastrophic error.
And would the pendulum of the presidency swing backwards to what could be seen as normality before Trump, or do you think it's sort of permanently stuck a bit on the Trump line of that spectrum?
I think inevitably it will swing back a bit. That has been the historical trend for many decades. But whether it can swing right back to the previous position is not something that I'm certain about. I think that he has certainly changed the Republican Party beyond recognition. And even on the Democratic side, I think in terms of the US role in the world, I think he is leading a lot of Americans to question whether this big-hearted, broad-shouldered approach that America has adopted since the Second World War is really in its interest. So I suspect that idea of an America gladly shouldering that kind of global responsibility is going to be harder and harder for presidents to justify.
Well, as the Chinese say, we're living in interesting times. Michael Fullilove, thank you very much indeed. Thanks for being at WPC TV. Thanks.
Thank you for having me.